Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Tasty Tidbits Podcast. Get ready to receive rich, well-seasoned, and tasteful tidbits to transform your life. Each week, Dr. Tiffany comes to you with inspirational encouragement and thought-provoking interviews to help you revolutionize your walk with God. Are you hungry for more of His presence? Then get ready. And now, your host, pastor, author, and motivational speaker, Dr. Tiffany Watkins.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Tasty Tidbits. I am your host, Dr. Tiffany Watkins. I'm so excited to be with you again today. And I am so excited also because of the topic that we're going to be discussing today. And I believe it's very important that we get this information out there because there are a lot of people that are struggling in toxic relationships. And we're going to be talking to Shannon today about toxic relationships. But I want to let you know a little bit more about Shannon. Shannon Petrovich. She earned her bachelor's degree and her master's in social work, and she earned her clinical license in social work and substance abuse counseling and is a board-certified diplomat in clinical social work. Shannon is a therapist, an author, and a YouTube creator specializing in helping people deal with and heal from narcissistic, abusive, and other toxic relationships. And I'm so excited to even hear a little bit more about the narcissism. But she also has a new book out, and it's called Out of the Fog and Into the Clear, Journaling to Help You Heal from Toxic Relationships. And it has earned a #1 Amazon bestselling status on codependency, self-help from abuse, and personal transformation. Her YouTube channel, Therapist Talks, offers information, insights, and strategies on a wide range of mental health issues and has over 23,600 subscribers and 1.5 million views. So wow, welcome today, Shannon. How are you?
Thanks so much, Dr. Watkins. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing well. It is a pleasure to have you a part of the podcast today. So if you don't mind, just give the listeners a little bit more information about yourself.
Well, as you said, I've been a therapist for over 35 years. And about 4 years ago, I decided that giving information and strategies 1 hour, one person at a time was felt like it wasn't as much as I could accomplish in the world. So I started a YouTube channel because I really could see that a lot of people were watching YouTube for a variety of reasons. And I really wanted to share mental health information, insights, and strategies to people all over the world who had no access to that kind of therapy or information. It's been a wild ride. I didn't expect that it would all focus in on narcissistic and other toxic relationships, but that's what people really wanted to hear and what really resonated for them. And I found that so many people were really lost in the fog of those types of relationships. And after a couple of years of doing just specifically those types of videos, I realized that I couldn't do it all that much justice in terms of really helping people deal with and heal from those kinds of relationships. And that's what inspired me to write the book.
Mm-hmm. And at one time, and I don't know the statistics now, but was it 1 in 4 people would be abused? I'm not sure. I don't have that offhand, especially in domestic violence. It could be even lower than that. But I know even where we live here, it's a very big issue in regards to just abusive relationships and a lot of people going to prison and things behind that because it's such a big issue. And so today and throughout today's conversation, we're going to discuss the toxic relationships and how to, heal from them. Could you explain some signs of a toxic relationship to those that may be listening and aren't sure that they may can get a little bit more information on that?
Yeah, and it's very confusing because a lot of times the relationship is very mixed. And so a lot of times a relationship will start off with a lot of positives, and then it will gradually become more and more negative and toxic. And so a lot of times people will stay stuck in that relationship thinking, well, if I just do this differently, or if I do that differently, maybe we can get back to where we started. And in fact, that person may have been putting on a facade in the beginning, and you're never getting back to that start because that was all a love bombing facade that they used to suck you in. So I think it's really important to recognize that some people are just wired differently. If you are generally an empathic, compassionate, honest person who values integrity and those sorts of character qualities and values, then it's hard to even understand and conceptualize someone who is so profoundly self-centered that they will manipulate and control. They'll lie, cheat, steal, tell wild stories about you, undermine you, tell you that they're wonderful in front of your face and then devalue you a minute later. All of these things can be so baffling if you're just not wired that way. And so I think that's part of why people get sucked in and then have a hard time seeing through the fog and getting out.
You know, I'm sorry. When you said that, I was thinking about something you said as well. I was watching one of your videos and you were saying how actually a person, and help me out if I'm wrong, but you said that they're a narcissistic person that may be narcissistic. It's easy for them to lie. So you're, in average, you can tell if somebody's lying. With them, they do it so much, it just is natural to them.
Yeah, there are no tells because they're doing it constantly.
Yeah.
And so I think part of what, in terms of red flags and signs of a toxic relationship, if a person is really self-centered, like to a profound degree, if they control and manipulate all around getting what they want, the way they want it, how they want it, when they want it, and they're all about that. If they're all about puffing themselves up to hold up that, I liken narcissism to a hot air balloon. And a hot air balloon, you have to constantly pump hot air into it in order to keep it inflated. Otherwise, it implodes and then explodes usually. And that's really a great analogy for a person with a narcissistic personality. They have no really good, solid internal sense of self. And so they have to be constantly puffed up or adored or given attention, and otherwise they implode. So they're constantly forcing other people around them to pay attention to them, to adore them, to notice them. And when a person is like that, if you are step back enough and aware enough, you can see that. And you can see that they're really not about other people, that they are about themselves and puffing themselves up in every way, shape, and form. They tend to be very superficial, obviously. So they're focused on appearances and not depth and meaning and purpose. So it's easy to see them from that perspective. But you can see also, people will tell you that they're empathic or compassionate, but you can notice the way they treat people. How do they treat the waiter? How do they treat the bus person? How do they talk about people? Do they laugh at other people's pain? Do they make fun of people who struggle? Those are the kinds of indicators that you want to watch out for when you're first getting to know someone.
While you were talking, I was just thinking about that. Do you think that narcissism and what's the other, what do they call it? In the crime area.
Oh, sociopathic.
Yeah. So do you think those two go together?
So narcissism exists, as all mental health issues do, on a wide range. So from mild narcissistic traits to severe narcissistic personality disorder. And in the very extreme of personality disorder, sociopathy is part of it, oftentimes. And all that means is that they have zero empathy and zero concern for other people's rights, feelings, needs, wants, really their personhood. And so you can feel over time, and you can notice it in a loved one, that over time that person is not really allowed to exist in that relationship as a whole person. They're merely there to puff up that person, to give them attention and adoration, and their own wants, needs, thoughts, feelings don't exist. So you can notice, if you didn't notice in the beginning and you got sucked in, those are the kinds of things to notice that will indicate that you're in a toxic relationship. And then if you try to assert yourself, if you try to talk about your thoughts, feelings, wants, needs, if you try to elicit some empathy, and that person shuts you down, gets angry, gets pouty, does all of that manipulation and control, then you really know that that is a toxic relationship.
Mm-hmm. So Shannon, why do you think that there's so many people struggling with toxic relationships, going through those relationships?
Boy, that's a good question. And I'm not sure. I think it's always been a problem. And we didn't really use the language of narcissistic 30 years ago, but I worked in the domestic violence field. And certainly these behaviors have been around forever. So it's not that it's anything new, but I think talking about it in terms of narcissistic personality and traits, that's kind of more new in the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is in our culture a lot of confusion around relationships. I think there is less of a focus on character qualities for ourselves and values driven life for each other. And I think people tend to be more self-centered these days, and that is more accepted and also even glorified in social media. And so if you think about all the superficiality and all of how people define themselves with their looks and their bank account and their jobs and their social media, and that is the opposite of what we need to do if we want to have a healthier society and healthier relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and sometimes it's, if you've never been in a type of relationship like that, sometimes I find people at times can be somewhat unsympathetic and not very understanding, because of the people that enter in those type of relationships. And I've come to learn to understand you have to learn empathy, because you don't know what type of background they came from. You don't know what they have been dealing with, and just the self-esteem issues. It could be a wide gamut of things that they're dealing with. And so it's important for us to be sensitive and trying to help the person that's in that toxic relationship to know that there is a way out and that there is help, instead of condemning them or, just being hard on them. Why don't you just, get out of it? It's just not that easy.
That's absolutely right. And that's why we talk about the fog and getting out of the fog into the clear, because when you're in that kind of relationship, it is absolutely baffling. It is as if you're in an ocean fog situation. You don't know which way is left, right, up, or down. And it's so difficult to see with any kind of clarity how to get out, what happened, how you got in there. And the tendency is just to feel stupid, to feel like you're to blame, and to be really hard on yourself. And so that doesn't help because somebody else is already telling you those things and blaming you and taking taking no accountability for themselves and blaming you for everything. So it all kind of buries you in this feeling of being in a fog. So when we talk about how to get out of that fog, it's really important that you take a look at the facts of the situation. And oftentimes those come as a result of an incident or an episode where there was something really bad that happened. And when that happens, it's important to write it down, to tell people who are your people, so that you can stay focused on those facts, because pretty soon you're going to go back into that fog. So when you see any of those realities and facts for what they are, and you really see what this person is about, it's important that's why I talk about journaling. If you can write down those facts and you can stay the course and really drag your heart through the process of getting emotionally clear of this person. We can also get those facts from other people. Oftentimes there are other people who love us and say, look, I've noticed this, this, and this. And we kind of want to poo-poo that and say, well, you just don't understand them the way I do, because our emotions are already attached to that person. But it's an unhealthy trauma bond kind of attachment. It's not healthy. And if we can keep those facts lined up in our head, we can make a wise decision with our rational mind, and we can walk ourselves through it without getting sucked back in again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shannon. And so what are some other things that we could do or those that we know could do to get free from an abusive partner and a parent, adult, a child or a sibling or a work colleague? Because it's not just abusive partners, but, adults who abuse their children, siblings that abuse each other, and even work colleagues.
Absolutely. And a lot of the, if I look at the analytics of the last few months, one of my most watched videos recently has been when your son or daughter is a narcissist. And that has been getting a ton of attention because a lot of adults have adult children and they're either separated off from their grandchildren, they're being abused and verbally or even physically assaulted by their adult child. And sometimes, that is fraught with a lot of baggage because they're our kid, and it's really hard to stomach that and to deal with that and to set boundaries up and actually walk through that. But it's all the same thing. And one of the first steps that I walk through in my book is to assess the toxic relationship within your own mind. Because oftentimes, either because of early childhood experiences or this person who has been devaluing and manipulating and controlling us for however long they have been, that we have a very harsh internal critic. And so whenever we feel sad or frustrated or disappointed or we make a mistake, we dump on ourselves internally in the worst, most harsh ways. And so if we are that toxic within our own minds, we're not going to be able to get free from someone else who's toxic because it's all resonating back and forth. And so we have to first address that harsh internal critic and get free of that and start to become compassionate with ourselves, start to really rebuild a sense of self from the inside out. What are our character qualities? Who am I that I actually like and respect? What are my values? What matters to me? And when you can reestablish all that, and when you can start to be your own best friend and be encouraging and caring and compassionate towards yourself, then you can start to address the other person with setting boundaries initially. If it's violence, you have to just get out right away and sort out the emotions later. But if there's just sort of a back and forth and you're not sure, you can always set boundaries. And what that looks like is that you have to look at the 3 Ps. So we undermine ourselves with people pleasing, placating, and peacekeeping.
Yes, yes.
And when we're doing that, what we're doing is we're being actually dishonest. So we need to, tell the truth in love. You're someone who understands that really well from James. And so we need to say the truth in love with that person. And we need to own our own thoughts, feelings, wants, needs, and ask for, the ability to be able to exist as a whole person within that relationship. So then that person has 2 choices. They can accept, honor, respect, or they can really escalate. So either way, that boundary works because either it works because it changes the relationship and gives that potential relationship some oxygen of truth, or it shows you that this person has absolutely no willingness or ability to respect and honor you at all because they've escalated just because you asked to be seen and heard. And so then you know that relationship is not resolvable.
And one thing that you mentioned, Shannon, is that, if it's an abusive relationship, you need to get out as quick as possible. And a lot of people stay in abusive relationships because of fear that something would happen, because a lot of times those partners will take action, on those threats. And so it builds a fear there that continues to hold the individual in the relationship. My mother experienced abuse early in life, and one of the things that helped her to get out was support. And so it is so imperative that you build a good support system, someone that can be with you there along the journey and to help you to carry you through it, even all the way out of it. whether it's a therapist, Shannon is a therapist, but whether it's a therapist, whether it's a relative you can trust, or a friend you could trust, or anyone that you could trust, because having that support system shows you that there's someone in your corner and that you can get out of it, and you have extra strength to help you along the way. Do you agree with that, Shannon?
Absolutely. And there's also domestic violence hotlines and other support hotlines, so that if you don't have people in your world anymore, because the other thing that an abusive person, a controlling, manipulative person does is separate you from your people, so that you don't have support and you don't have a sense of reality. So it's a very intentional thing that they separate you from your people and isolate you. But I think oftentimes people are embarrassed to go back to the people that they've isolated from. And I really strongly encourage people to let go of that shame and just move back into those relationships, to call the person that you haven't talked to in forever, and to reach out to the people that you've cut yourself off from, because they more than likely will be thrilled to be there for you. And they are still there for you. It was you in that relationship that cut them off. And so, going back to that, or getting the support from the hotlines if you have to, because you're right. The person who's very manipulative and controlling, when they absolutely lose control, is when they are the most dangerous. So that fear is legitimate fear, absolutely legitimate fear. And you have to listen to that fear, because that's giving you the wisdom to know what to do and what not to do. But don't stay stuck in the fear, and let yourself be sort of abused and driven into that deep, dark hole forever. Use the fear to have the energy to find your way out and get the support that you need to get out. And your heart may still not be there. You can love and leave. You can still love that person. You can still wish it was better, but you have to line up the facts in your mind and recognize those are the facts.
So, and just thinking about relationships, when is it advisable to use boundaries, and when do you need to just get out? So we talked about getting out.
Well, I think there's kind of two pieces of getting out too. Emotionally, it's important to leave emotionally whenever you feel abused, neglected, not heard, not seen. And we can actually leave emotionally and stay physically if it's safe. So a lot of people, when I'm talking with men and women who have abusive adult children and they want to stay in relationship with them because of grandchildren, you can actually learn to emotionally separate from that person, and sort of, I call it watching the circus go by, so that you can go, oh, there they are doing those lies. Oh, there they are doing that control manipulation thing. Oh, there they are doing that drama thing, and not get yourself emotionally involved in it, not get yourself overwrought about it. Just sort of emotionally separate, watch the circus, and don't jump in the monkeys' cages with them. So when you can accomplish that, that's emotional separation. And sometimes you can stay in a relationship if you need to. If you're co-parenting, you have to learn to do that, right? So even if you divorce somebody, you have to learn to emotionally separate so that you can swap the kids out at McDonald's or whatever, and not get yourself overwrought and over emotional in those swap outs. But if there's violence, you do have to just sort of remove yourself and then learn to emotionally separate, because that is not a resolvable situation. But sometimes people will know that they can't get out right then and there, and then they will consciously do the placating, peacekeeping, and people pleasing in a conscious way, so that they're not feeling so emotionally undermined, but they're actually making conscious choices until they can remove themselves from the situation. So you know what works and you know what doesn't work, and deciding to do that is really important if you're in physical danger. If you're emotionally bankrupted by this person, a lot of people feel like they have to emotionally get out, or the abuse is all emotional, but they have to get out in order to save their mental health. And they literally feel like they're going to go crazy or have a complete physical and emotional meltdown if they stay. And that's important to recognize too and get out. Otherwise, you can try the boundaries. And again, they either show that you can resolve it or that it's not resolvable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And with that being said, how can all of us have a healthier relationship in any relationship?
I think it starts with telling the truth in love. I think that we do tend to, I think especially as women, we tend to do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people pleasing and
Yes.
placating. I saw you laugh.
Uh-huh.
And I think we're kind of trained up to be that way. And I understand that. And that's a wonderful gift and a strength. And we're compassionate and empathic, and that's lovely. But if we are not telling our truth and not saying what's true for us and not having our own emotions and thoughts and needs and moods and all of that, and we're not taking care of any of that, we are running ourselves down the road to emotional bankruptcy and depletion and crash and burn and burnout and all of that. So it's really important, I think, to have healthy relationships. We have to just be in our truth. And
Mm-hmm.
the truth sets us free. We
Yeah.
are, able to be, and then we give our partner the opportunity to respond instead of react, and we give them the opportunity to grow, and we give our relationship the opportunity to grow in that love and in that truth. So I think those are really, really key, certainly in my marriage, and I think in all relationships.
Mm-hmm. And we just have to really be, like you said, true to ourselves. I deal with a lot of young people, and even in middle school, and a lot of them in elementary school, even with students and different things like that. Some relationships with the students that they're with can be overbearing and pushy. And I had one young lady come to me and say, "Well, how do I tell them I don't like them?" I say, "You just tell them the truth. Be honest." Well, that'll be rude. That'll be rude. And I was like,
Yeah.
no. I say, you just have to be honest and truthful with them. Well, I'll just ignore them. I say, no, they'll keep coming until you stand and tell the truth. But
Right.
that's even with a young person dealing with that. But it's the same thing a lot of times with adults as well.
Right.
And so it's so important, like you said, is that we stand in our truth, because it could protect us. I want to say one more thing or ask one more thing. Kind of didn't plan it, but before we go, is just to notice the warning signs. And Shannon, if you can agree, most of the time, if we pay attention to our intuition, our spirit, if we pay attention to those nudges when we first get in that relationship, we can't ignore those warning signs, because there's something always there. I remember a relationship that I was dating immediately, in the beginning, and this individual on the first date gave me a ring, like an engagement ring. And I was like, whoa, hold on.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, I don't even know you, how are you going to give me this? And they were like, well, I just want you to know, I mean business, but that was a red flag for me. It's like,
Hmm.
why are you trying to jump so quickly?
Hmm.
On the first date, on the first,
Wow, that's a new one. I haven't heard
yes,
that one.
on the first date. And so it was like the whole time, on the outside, like you say in the beginning, they're showering you with everything. They would
Uh-huh.
rent cars every time we go out, and just take me to the nicest places. But something just in the inside of me, just something was just, and it just, I couldn't put my finger on it. It was just like something, wasn't right there. And and just seeing that individual, it was things that reminded me about someone that I knew was abusive. Um,
Yeah.
but I couldn't put my finger on it. But those are little keys and notes and warning signs that you don't need to go further. And needless to say, we ended up breaking up because, but it's important to pay attention to those warning signs. So can you talk a little bit about that before we go, Shannon?
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. I did a couple of videos. One is My Empathy is Killing Me, and the other was how to develop a trustworthy creepometer. And, and the one thing that will derail it So I think it's really important to recognize right off the bat whether that person is love bombing you or loving you. So love is a very action oriented thing, and it's actually getting to know you and really understanding who you are and wanting to know you and understand who you are. Love bombing is more like what you were talking about with the ring and the cars and the all of that. And you can always tell the difference if you take a step back from that person and you say, "Hey, I just don't have any time this week. I'm really busy," or whatever. If they pout and throw a tantrum and have an issue with it and get mad and either pressure you or back away entirely so that they'll try to get you to come running to them, you're in it with a really immature person who is very self-centered and very much love bombing you, not loving you. If you take a step back or say, I just need a little bit of space, and they go, yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm here, and I really care about you, but I'm not going to push you. That is a person of quality who has a solid sense of themselves and isn't going to be throwing little tantrums every time they don't get their way. So I think those are things to watch out for. And the one thing that will derail a creepometer is getting intimate too quickly, because oxytocin is released when you are intimate with somebody, and oxytocin is the chemical in our brain that is the same one that happens when you breastfeed a baby. So you are attaching yourself to this person that you don't know that well at the level of a baby and yourself and a baby. And that is so powerful. And it's so hard to get rid of that attachment when you realize this person is not for you. So if you haven't been intimate yet, it's much easier to keep your wise mind on board and your wise mind in charge. And it's easier for you to see that person for who they are and walk away in the early days.
That was said so well. I was just, when you gave that example about the attaching with the baby, that's just powerful. I'm just on that. That's very powerful. And I love that where you were saying the difference between loving you and love bombing you. I think that just brings it out to help people understand, and the listeners to understand that there is a difference, and that would help you to pay attention to those warning signs, because there is a difference.
Yeah, it's huge. And so many people get sucked into that love bombing. And then when they start to devalue you, then you think, well, I guess, I really want to get back to that place. So I'm going to fix that part of me. But it isn't about that. It's about that person is grooming you to beat up on yourself and to take responsibility for all the emotions and all the moods that they have pouring out of them. And they want to control and manipulate you 24/7. So that's a setup for disaster. So when a person devalues you, you got to step back and take a look at that person for who they are and that relationship for what it's turning into.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today, Shannon. This has been very helpful to the listeners. It's so much information, and I want to get the book, and I know it'll be able to help others. But would you let the listeners know how they could get in touch with you?
Sure. So I have a website, and that kind of is the Grand Central Station of all my stuff. And it's called, you can get there two ways, either therapisttalks.com or nofoggydays.com. That's the new name of it, which I think is fun. And so that's the website, and I have blogs and podcasts. So this will be posted on there, and also Therapist Talks on YouTube. If you just search for Therapist Talks or Shannon Petrovich, you'll find my channel. Therapist Talks on Facebook, Instagram. I'm not as busy on those things, and Twitter. I don't care for those as much. And that's about it. Yeah, that's it. So there's a lot on the website, and it also has a link to the Amazon link for the book. So if you go to the website, you'll find the book too.
Awesome. And listeners, if you are experiencing any type of relationships that is toxic, or someone that are maybe dealing with relationships that are toxic, then go to Shannon's website, go there and get some information there that will be able to help someone else. Purchase the book, get it, read it. And also she is a therapist. Find out more information about what she does, because there's always help there. And if an individual has support, and even she talked about something earlier, a lot of times they're secluded, when they get in relationships, they're blocked off in that relationship and they are fearful or afraid to reach out. Never stop trying to reach out to that individual, because one day they may come back to you. So it's very important. When she was saying that, I thought about that. Even when it seems like they've done away with you, with all that you can do to be safe, try to stay in touch with them, because I think that's a big help in getting them to recover. And so check Shannon's site out today. And we just thank you for being a part of the podcast again today. And we hope to see you again on our next episode. You all have a wonderfully blessed day. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Tasty Tidbits with Dr. Tiffany Watkins. If you're enjoying the show, feel free to subscribe, rate, and share with your friends. To learn more about Dr. Tiffany, check out her blog on Goodreads.com or visit her website at www.renewedfaithministriesinc.com. Until next time, stay blessed.